Welcome to The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Sollenberger. Today's episode is an introduction to IFS with Derek Scott. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited you're here, and I hope that you will share this podcast, this episode, with your friends, your family, your colleagues, people that are interested in IFS, people that don't know what you're talking about when you're like, I'm super excited about this thing, or I'm doing this new type of therapy, or I'm going to all these trainings. So this is the podcast to share. I think Derek does an amazing job teaching the model. He does it with humor, with wisdom, and with warmth. Come follow me over on Instagram at IFS Tammy. Join the Facebook group at the One Inside Facebook page. I love getting your comments and your messages. They mean so much to me. I can't even tell you. It feels like a hug. So thank you so much for those of you who have reached out to me and sent me emails. It just means so much to me. Just a reminder for Derek, he has a YouTube page. You definitely want to check out his YouTube page. And then he also has a website where he has so many free videos, and he has a new parenting program with videos, and it's just so great. He has so many great things to offer. But for today, he offers us this intro to IFS. Enjoy. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm good. It's so good to see you.
All right, what are we doing?
Yeah, so I was thinking, I really want to put out a podcast for the people that love IFS and they're super into it, but they have a hard time explaining it to their friends and family. They're like, I'm into this cool thing, and they're trying to explain it. And I want to be able to give them a podcast that helps them say, here's what it is. So I wanted to do a little intro to what is this thing? What are parts? What are we talking about? What is this internal family systems that we're also into?
All right, it's great. Yeah, well, I'm glad. I'm glad you called on me for that because what I notice is, as you know, those of us that get into this get very enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
And our clients get very enthusiastic about it. So if anyone is listening to this that's not a therapist, and just wants to know what it's all about, you might as well listen to it just to shut up your friend that keeps going on about it, right? You can say, okay, I watched the video. Now stop. You know? But there's a reason. There's a reason we get enthusiastic, right? So I'm gonna talk about what this is, not as a therapy. You know, in a way, it's a shame that this started out as a therapy because in a lot of places there's a lot of disdain for therapy, right? I've had clients that say, "Oh, my partner thinks I'm just paying you to be my friend," right? Or therapy is somewhere you go if if there's something really wrong with you, or you just can't afford it. It's elitist, and it's where the rich people go to cry out their first world blues. So, so in a way, it's different that this is. It's a shame that this is IFS therapy because what Dick Schwartz, the guy that founded this, what Dick has done is he's figured out, bless his heart, how our personalities work. And once you've got that, it's a game changer. Right. So I want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about therapy. Right. So,
Perfect. Yeah, I love that.
so I think what might help people to understand this is I'm gonna tell a story about a little girl and a little girl that grows up, and just let me know if this story is making sense. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So little girl, 6 years old, right? Loves her dad. Her dad loves her. Right. Her dad also, likes to have a few drinks, right? And when he's had a few drinks, he's a little less patient, doing his own thing. So this little girl, the 6-year-old girl, she's like, Daddy, I did a story today at school. I got a gold star for it. Right? She's showing it to Daddy, but Daddy's had a couple of beers at this point, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's nice. He's reading the paper, and she's like, but Daddy, and she crawls on his lap, and she pushes the paper aside. He's like, not now. Oh, okay. So Daddy doesn't want her in that moment, right? So what does she do with that? She feels bad. She feels sad. But then a part of her says, oh, you know what? We've just got to try harder. We've got to make better pictures. right? That'll get daddy's interest, right? So let's wind forward 2 years. She's 8. She got a report card. Right? She got 5 A's and a B plus. She's so excited. She goes home, right? She has to wait for dad to come home. It's a traditional family, right? Dad comes home. First thing dad wants to do is have a scotch, right? She's like, Daddy, hang on. Okay, okay, she's hanging on, right? Daddy gets his scotch. He says, I want to show you my report card. Dad's had a shit day at work. He's just not having a good day, right? And he's feeling bothered and just wants to quietly have his drink and numb out, right? Okay, let me see it. Huh, what's that B plus about? So she's crushed. And she feels sad and she feels rejected. But if I just try harder, if I just try harder. And so let's wind forward. She's 10. It's sports day. She's put her energies into academia, into art, now into sports, right? She looks out. Dad's not there. Okay. And she gets penance. She wins a bunch of stuff, right? She goes home to tell him. Yeah, that's nice. Okay. Well, I just have to try harder. So what we see here, and this is what we're talking about when we're talking about parts, right? There's a part of her feeling really sad, really rejected. And another part comes up with a strategy. I'll just try harder. And so I don't know, Tammy, I'm sure come across people who are perfectionists.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we can say this is the birth of the perfectionist part, right? I just need
Yeah.
to try harder. If I get it right, if I get all A's, if I make that picture better, if I run even faster, then my daddy will pay attention to me. Right? And that part with that strategy is trying to make it better for the part that feels sad and rejected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes those parts that feel sad and rejected, we all tell ourselves stories about things, right? It's what we do as human beings. So that part might decide, well, maybe the reason daddy's not interested in me is because I'm not really lovable.
Mm.
And that's hard. That's a really hard place to sit and to hold and to believe, which is why the perfectionist part says, no, no, we'll just try harder, we'll be fine. We'll
Right.
just try harder.
Hmm.
Right? So that's not an uncommon story.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about, parts and parts work, that's just how you begin to show up in your personality. But let's stay with that little girl, right? So let's say, she tries out for the team when she's 14 and she doesn't make the team. What's she going to tell herself about why she didn't make the team, do you think?
She's not worthy. She's not good enough. Not
Okay.
valuable. Yeah, she should have tried harder, practiced more, been more
Yeah,
disciplined,
good.
lost weight. I could keep going. Let
Yeah,
me keep
all of that.
going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we're getting it, right? But
Yeah.
so let's say same kid now, she's 17, first love. For those of us that had a first love, a tender first love, you know how tender that is. How this is the one that's never going to end, even though people say it will. They're just
Yeah.
bitter and cynical, and it ends.
Oh.
So what story is she going to tell us now?
Yeah, same story, right? If only I tried more, if only I was different, if only I was better, if only I was prettier, if only I was smarter.
Mhm, good. So let's wind forward. She's now 22. She's working in a firm. She applies for a promotion. She doesn't get it. What does she tell herself about why she didn't get the promotion?
Yeah, same thing. I'm not as good as
Mhm.
the other people. Yeah, if only I stayed up all night long instead of just till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. So that great, right? So this, perfectionist part keeps driving with its solution, right? Which
Yeah.
is exhausting, but it will keep driving the show. Now, let's say she's, 28 and she now has a partner, a stable partner, a long-term relationship, and they've invited people over for dinner, right? Remember, everything's got to be perfect.
Mm.
So her partner comes in. It's like, great, did you get the ice? Oh, damn it. No, I forgot. I'll get it later. I just saw your face. How's she going to respond?
It, yeah, my heart was like, like, yeah, yeah. Well, the thing, okay, right in that moment, though, I feel like she's going to be really angry, but she's
Oh,
probably
yeah.
not going to let herself be angry because then he would leave. So she almost has like a double thing happening there where she's angry, she's hurt, the dinner isn't going to be perfect. And so I've got all these feelings, but I can't tell my partner because he won't accept me if
That's
I
great.
show all this to him.
That's great. Yeah, that's brilliant. So what you're describing there, so there's language for this, right? And the language we use for this is that angry part of her, right, flares up. It's not going to be perfect. If it's not going to be perfect, it means I'm not lovable because it lands on that other part of her, right? So the angry part wants to go at him, but then very quickly another part squashes it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And we call that part a manager. It's managing the anger, right? That's all
Mm,
this is.
mm,
This is just life, right?
yeah.
If she doesn't have that strong manager that's able to squash the angry part, she might start freaking out at him, right? You don't get it. I don't seem to matter to you. What do you mean it's no big deal? You ruined it. Everything's gonna be ruined because of you. Nah, 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 right? How's he gonna respond? Or she?
What's hard for me to because I'm me, I'm like, wow, that must feel really good to be able to express to yell like that. Like, wow, that must feel really good. Okay, wait a minute. So she expresses herself that way, and that's not a good thing. Okay, I'm hearing that. So part of me is like, wow, what does that feel like to be able to do that? Um, but yeah, so I
Well,
can
hang on,
go, okay.
hang on, because you're right. In her system, in that moment, it's going to feel great. She's going to feel righteous, right?
Yeah,
Because when
right.
that angry part takes us over, I've never known an angry part that does not feel righteous. Righteous, you've let me down again. I don't even know why I'm with you, blah, blah, blah. And she, will go at her partner.
Yeah.
However, maybe the next day, when she's reflecting on how she freaked out on her partner, what's going to happen inside her own head?
Mm, guilt, guilt, maybe,
Yeah.
and sort of
Yeah.
no wonder why I don't know why he stays with me. I'm even imagining dinner, right? Maybe he's still there. Maybe he leaves, but maybe he's still, and they sit at this dinner. And now that she's kind of calmed down, she's had some wine, she's got all of her friends around for dinner, and she immediately starts feeling like, why is he with me? I just really screwed up. Like I'm not perfect. I didn't
Right.
handle that perfectly. He's going to leave
That's it.
me.
That's it. So that's the part we call the manager now beating up the part that got angry. And then you get this da 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 in your own head, right? But the part that gets ignored is that one that goes way back that worries that she's not lovable.
I was thinking that initial feeling, like punch in the gut feeling when he came home and said, I don't have the ice. Like that's the feeling, that's the part that gets ignored, I
That's
think.
right. That's right. Yeah. Because we don't really know what to do with that, right? So we get
Yeah.
caught up in the other parts.
Yeah.
And that leads to a lot of the tension in our own heads, in our own psyches when these things come up, right? And I mean, depending on who this person is and how their life is, if this keeps happening, partner might say, "You're a control freak. I can't deal with this." Right? And then the person may go to therapy, right? If that's an option for them, and say, "I need some help. This is ruining my relationship. I keep freaking out on my partner." Right? So
Mm,
that's where the therapy comes in. And if it's an IFS therapist, all we do, as you know, is help people to get curious about what's going on inside with these different
mm,
parts. That's all it is.
mm-hmm,
That's all it is.
mm-hmm,
Right? Because we know when people start to get curious and they can access their own compassion for what's going on inside, tracking all the way back to that little girl who feels like daddy doesn't love me because there's something wrong with me. We can help that. We can help that part out. That's what we do.
I love to, one of my favorite things about this is that, right, so all we're seeing in this moment is this girl that's either, highly, rigid and stressed and needs to have the ice and then flailing and yelling and enraged. And so she goes to therapy with that. But then if we look at her parts and we're curious, then we'll find the function of those parts, that they have this function. And then that tracks us back to the dad and sort of really having compassion for the parts who have this function and understanding that that's how they're trying
Right.
to help us.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that can be challenging in that is that we've had to quote unquote deal with these parts our whole lives. So other parts have dealt with them. And we take on a lot of the internal messages, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So a very common one is I'm too sensitive. Right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever, can I ask you, do you mind if
Yeah.
you've ever been told that in your
Oh
life?
my gosh, are you kidding
Yeah.
me? Oh yeah, definitely. I can, yeah. This isn't my therapy session, but yes, I could tell you story after story after story. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely been told that. I remember pretty recently in the last year, my mom saying something, not like in a way that came up in my childhood, like you're too sensitive, but something really nice about being sensitive. And I said, sort of this part of me, maybe it was self, was like, I'm so grateful that I'm sensitive. And I was able to say, I'm so thankful that I'm sensitive. I love being sensitive. I wouldn't want to be. And I was able to say that, and it felt so good. But it's taken me a long time to get there.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that, right? Because when I teach this, I'll ask usually the group I'm teaching, has anyone ever been told they're too sensitive? Tell me, every hand goes up. Every
Wow.
hand goes up. And what's happening with too sensitive, there's no such thing. There's just sensitive and then the judgment.
Hmm.
That's what the two is. Right?
Oh,
But when we're
right.
judged for our sensitivity, yeah, when we're judged for that, we decide it's not okay. I am too sensitive, or there's something wrong with me because I'm so sensitive. And our sensitivity is how we engage with the world, with other people, with our children, with nature, with smells, with sounds, with art. Right? Without our sensitivity, we'd be bloody robots, right? But when that gets shamed, and what happens inside is it doesn't feel okay or it doesn't feel safe to express. And if that's a part of who I am, what happens is we can take on the belief that it's not safe to be me in all of my sensitivity because there's something wrong with me.
Right.
And I can't let people know that. Right? And so we dim our light. Right? We just
Hmm.
dim our way of being in the world. And that's so tragic. And
Hmm.
thankfully, it's not necessary. But if we understand where that comes from, our sensitivity has been judged and shamed, and a part of us has taken it on, it becomes possible to release it too. That's where the supposed therapy work comes in. But you can begin to do this by yourself. So I want people to consider when they go inside, if they've got that little 6-year-old girl whose daddy's ignoring, they might say, well, you just need to get on with it or suck it up or you're too sensitive or whatever they've been told, right? Trying to manage all of that. But consider this for a moment, just for a moment. Tammy, if you were to step out of your home today or your office or wherever you are, and on the sidewalk you saw a little 6-year-old girl sitting by herself, head in her hands, obviously crying. You look around, there's no grown-ups around. What are you going to do?
Go sit next to her.
And then do what?
See how she's doing. Ask her if she's okay.
Uh-huh.
See if she wants to talk about it.
Yeah. Find out where the adults are.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you immediately come from your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you do, right? Of
Yeah.
course you do. If that's different when we go inside, then we want to get curious about the difference. Because if there's a little girl in there who's sad because daddy doesn't seem to love me, and maybe it's because I'm not lovable, of course we want to come in with a big open heart to
Yeah.
that.
That's
Right?
great.
And
Yeah.
if we don't have a big open heart to that, we want to get curious about the parts of us that are worried about that or that have picked up other messages. Right? So the more
Yeah.
people can, anybody, this isn't about therapy, the more people can notice that there's different parts of them and they can get to know them and thank them. And not big, heavy stuff. The part of you that makes your grocery list, thank it. You sit down to a nice meal, you had a bunch of parts helping you make that meal. Stop for a moment and say, hey, thank you.
Mm.
In my system, that my yoga part's been losing the battle lately, but when it can drag me out to the yoga studio and get my ass on the mat, I take a moment in Shavasana to say, okay, thank you. Because it
Aw.
had to run interference with parts that wanted to read books and parts that wanted to have naps and parts that wanted to walk the dogs longer. And I had to cut through all of that to get me to, because it wants me to not be an old guy who's stiff, right? So
Mm.
just thank it, right? So the more we
Mm.
can do that, notice the parts, because we all have parts, it's just how we are. Notice them, thank them. The easier it is then to get to know some of these parts that are having a hard time and realize that that's not me. Even if a part of me believes I'm unlovable, that is not my truth. It may feel like that part's truth, which we need to hear about, but I can begin to realize that's not me and it's not true.
So from there, can we talk about who I really am then? Like, who am I really? And who's the one
Sure.
talking
Well,
to the parts?
yeah, it's a great
Who is that
question.
one?
Yeah. So when I asked you hypothetically about that little girl on the sidewalk, you were there immediately, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to sit next to you. What's wrong? What happened? So there you are. There's your loving nature. There's your compassion for this stranger, right? But little girl. There's your curiosity. You want to know what happened, right? Chances are you're sitting there feeling fairly calm, even if she's like, all over the place emotionally. You can just be that little rock with her, right? Even though you're a stranger, you're respecting your boundaries with her. You're sitting next to her, waiting for her to be available to you. So that's you, right? That's yourself.
Mm,
That's yourself, right? Sometimes called, your best self or your higher self, but it's just yourself.
yeah.
And of course, we know there are qualities of that, but some of them I just named, curiosity, compassion, calmness, also creativity, courage.
Well, so as you're saying that, I know there's this other thing thinking of, you know, parts of me that are really sensitive. And I was thinking about how other parts of me have dealt with that is um, becoming really numb. Like I'm just not going to feel anything, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
like disconnected. And
Mhm.
so there's sort of the sense like too sensitive, and then there's the part that tries to help that part by being disconnected or numb.
Yeah.
And then, but I was thinking about, well, then that limits my creativity because I don't get to be the creative. I don't get to see the world through the sensitive part's eyes. The sensitive part is like, wow, the leaves are changing and it's amazing. And it has this like childlike, wow. But if I'm disconnected from that, then I don't get that. I might just be like, I might not even notice it.
Yeah. Yeah. So these protected parts of us, thank you for that. They work hard in service of the other parts. Their strategy is, well, we just numb everything out and then we don't have to feel badly. But
Yeah.
because it's a general way of doing it, as you don't feel anything,
Yeah.
right? Same
Right.
with depression. Depression could be the same. A depressing part, depressing all the parts that are having a hard time. But then, if you're depressed, you're certainly not open to the delight of the leaves changing, and it takes a lot of internal effort to do that.
Yeah. So, right, so then I don't have access to that real me. The real me
Yeah.
is has that creativity, and I don't have access to that because I'm so numbed out or disconnected or
So, what we want to learn to do, all of us can, notice the different parts of us, when they come up, when I'm feeling numb, and just see if you can get curious about it. How come you're numbing me out? What's going on? Now, often these parts have been doing it for years or decades, so they don't necessarily know that you, Tammy, are a grown up, that I'm an old grown up, thank you, whichever part said that. So it could be a bit of work to say, hi, I am Derek, I'm 58, I'm you all grown up. And it can feel weird because we're not used to doing this, right? So we talk to the little people inside us. Well, if you want a definition of crazy, that's fairly close, right? So we also need to look at that. Like, this is new. This is a new way of understanding ourselves, but it's also accurate.
yeah.
It's an accurate way of understanding ourselves. And as you know, the gift of this is when I no longer identify with being unlovable, then the truth of me can step forward. Why on earth would I be unlovable? Why would I or you or any being on this planet be inherently unlovable? We're not born with that. But if a
Mm.
part of us takes it on as a belief, here's the good news: because it's been taken on, it can be released.
That's beautiful. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Right. You might think that you have thought forever that you were unlovable, but then when we track it back and we notice the little girl on like trying to get daddy's attention, and they're like, oh, that's what, so it's felt like it's forever because that's what you've learned forever. And so, but yet it's
Yeah.
not. It is something that you learned. Yeah. I love the updating because I think that's a really good way of tracking for people is that, well, I'll speak for myself. Like if I'm going about through my life and I all of a sudden feel like, I might feel like I'm acting younger or feeling younger or having a reaction that doesn't make sense with how old I am, then I can get like, okay, that's a part of me, that's a younger part. Um, this happened with my mom with making potatoes. I think I told you this. Like we were making potato salad, and my sister and I all of a sudden got really, really anxious about like how I was cutting the onions or something like that. And then, but I felt like frozen. And then my sister was like, Mom, how do you want me to cut the celery? And my mom was like, I don't care. I'm just so glad you guys are here. I'm glad we're all together. Yay. And then my sister said, well, I remember when we were younger, you would have been mad if we didn't cut the celery or the onions the right way. And she said exactly what I was feeling. And that's like sort of younger part of me was so scared because I don't want to get in trouble. So
Yeah.
that part of me needs to be updated that I'm not going to get in trouble. My mom's so different than she was when I was little, and I am different. I have the resources, like me and myself, I have the resources to handle if my mom gets mad at me for not cutting up the onions. As an adult, I could be like, whatever, mom, that's stupid. Like, but my 13-year-old can't do that. I mean, not that I would say that to my mom, but so I think that's so important that we update our parts because they have us as resources and the situations are often really different.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll get our attention just like in that example, right? They are, making supper or whatever. And then suddenly, ugh, right? Well,
Yeah.
that goes, there's a part saying, Tammy, I want your attention. There's something here I need you to pay attention to because suddenly you don't feel good. Right.
Yeah.
And then if you have the ability now, because you know how to do this, to come, oh, you're 13. Oh, mum used to get mad at you. Oh, you used to get scared about that. Oh, hey, you know what? You're not 13 anymore. Come, let me show you.
Perfect. Yeah.
So here's the thing. I want to go back to the 6-year-old example, right? If a grown up, let's say an aunt or an uncle, had been able to come to her and say, hey, you know what? Dad's kind of grumpy right now. He gets grumpy sometimes. Have you noticed? And you may not have noticed, but sometimes when he's drinking that brown stuff, he gets really grumpy, right? Because the brown stuff kind of makes him grumpy. But I want you to know something. That's about him, not about you. That's a
Mm.
great picture you've done. Maybe show it to dad in the morning. He's better in the mornings. What do you think?
Wow. Yeah.
So if some intervention like that had happened, that kid and the part of her that took on the belief or the worry that maybe daddy doesn't love me because I'm unlovable, it wouldn't have happened. There would have been an adult intervention that would have been appropriate.
Mm.
She wouldn't have had to deal with it all by herself, right?
Yeah.
So this is, we talk about these parts, you talk about updating because often they're frozen in time, right? They're stuck in that place.
Yeah.
So when we come back as the adult and say, hey, tell me what happened. Tell me what happened. You need to get past the ones that have strategized around this. Well, just be a perfectionist. Well, suck it up. Well, maybe there is something wrong with you. You get past all of them. You say to the little one, tell me what's going on inside. And then she's able to say to her sadness, right? I sometimes feel like my daddy doesn't love me. And maybe it's because I'm not lovable. That's tragic. So if you can hear that on the inside, tell me more about that. Well, I did this story and I got a gold star and he didn't care. Okay, that's hard. I hear you. Tell
Mm.
me more. Well, when I started, getting really good grades in school, I was so excited, and all he said was, "Why wasn't that B plus an A?" Okay, how's that for you? I feel really sad. Okay, I've got you. What else? And you listen to the whole story that part didn't get to tell a trusted adult at the time, because if it can tell you inside the grown up, and if you're able to hear it from that place of love and caring, here's the magic. It doesn't need to hold it anymore.
Mm.
It literally doesn't need to hold that anymore. It's like it's been uploaded to the adult, then it can be released. Then that part can go back to where it was before. It's a great kid, right? It's happy, it's confident.
Yeah.
And then the perfectionist can slow the F down, right? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, we don't need to be compelled into being perfect, because if we're not, it means we're unlovable. And then the relationship with the partner can relax. And then if the partner forgets the eyes, it's like, I can't believe you forgot the eyes again. But it's not rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so things come into more balance, more harmony. That's the gift of getting to know that you have parts, getting curious about them, letting them know you're there, you're a big old grown up who cares about them. And why wouldn't you love these different parts of you? They're yours.
Mm.
They're yours. What a gift.
Yeah.
Right? Even the ones that don't like each other, they're a gift. They don't have to like each other.
I love that
Yeah.
too because with that witnessing that story, I was just thinking that's probably the first time that little girl or that the now woman, 20 something year old woman has ever heard that or said those things out loud, even said them to herself. Like, how many things have happened to us that we've never even admitted to ourselves how
Mhm.
hurtful that was? And so I was thinking as that little girl was sharing her story, that, wow, it probably felt so freeing just to say those things and
Yeah,
have an adult, that woman's self, hear that
yeah,
and be heard and understood and seen, just like the aunt, right? If the aunt had come and said, "Hey, I'm hearing you, I'm seeing you, I'm understanding what's going on right now,"
yeah.
because we don't, that doesn't happen a lot.
It doesn't. And it's one of the reasons, when we start to go inside, often the parts that are holding that kind of distress will get our attention first, right? And that can feel a bit daunting. It's like, oh God, if I go back to my childhood, it's just going to be a series of disappointments and, feeling like I'm not good enough and why do that and blah, blah, blah. And as you know, because you've been doing the work for a while, you start off with those parts because they're the ones that most want your attention. You help them out, right? You listen to them, you help them release what they're holding. And then it's kind of like the ones behind them can come up. So you get to know the other parts from your childhood that haven't been able to get your attention, like the little one that loves colors and patterns and drawing,
Yeah.
right? Or the little one that loves figuring stuff out. Or the little one that loves, dismantling cars and putting them back together again. I mean, they are amazing little parts to have. And once you attend to the ones that are distressed, because they deserve the attention first, these other ones can pop forward, and it's so rich. It's so
Mm,
rich.
I love that. What about these the when you're saying, like, we get to love us, of course it's us and we love ourselves. So many people don't feel that way, right? They've got critics that say you're stupid, you're terrible, you're not worth it. Like, there isn't there that's sort of what they hear first, is all that
Sure,
negative, terrible stuff about themselves.
sure.
What are they to do?
So the critics, every part of us has a positive intent. That's the thing to get, right? So the critics, including the critics.
Yeah.
So you need to again bring your curiosity in, right? So if you didn't keep telling me I was a loser, what do you think might happen? And if you ask with genuine curiosity, it'll tell you. If I don't tell you you're a loser, you're going to start thinking you're better than you are. If you start thinking you're better than you are, people won't like you. If people don't like you, that part of you that believes it's not likable is going to get triggered. So I'm just
Mm,
going to keep you down so that we don't risk that. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Got it. Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you know how old I am? Do you know that I have some resources around people not liking me? Do you know that if people don't like me, that's information about them? No.
Mm. Oh, I like that.
Mm. It's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good. I like it.
yeah.
Do you mean
Unless I've
if
done
someone
something to
doesn't like me,
actively,
that's actually information about them? Sorry, I just cut you off.
unless you've done something, unless you've done something to hurt them, unless you've done something deliberately mean, or your firefighter's been up, screaming at them for not bringing the ice and telling them they've ruined your life, right? If you've done that, you need to take responsibility and make the repair,
Right,
right?
right, right.
But otherwise, if it's like, oh yeah, that Tammy, she thinks she's all that. Well, that's information about them, right? Okay, so apparently you have highly judgmental parts. Who doesn't, right? And some of them are sending their information my way. Okay.
I love it. That's great.
However, having said that, if, oh, that Tammy, she thinks she's all that, if that lands somewhere inside of you that feels badly,
Hmm.
then that's information about you. Then you've got a part that you can come to and say, hey, how come that felt so bad? How come that stung? Tell me about that.
That's great. I love that. Okay, so that's another way we know that we're in a part, or a part needs some attention, is if something lands on us and it stings. Then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
then that is a part that I need to, like, turn inward and give that part some attention.
Yeah. So this is what it's about for me. It's just about knowing that we have these different parts, knowing how some of them hold pain, some of them try and manage the pain, and then we as adults can come to them from our best self, which is just ourself really, and say, hey, tell me your story. We all want to be heard, right? We all want to be heard.
That's great. That's great.
I was working one time, I had a colleague, she was a social worker working with victims of torture in Kosovo. And I just had so much admiration for her work, and I couldn't do it. And I said, how do you do it? How do you hear story after story of torture? And she said, Derek, People just want to be heard. We all have a story to tell. And it's the same for our parts. They just want to be heard. And if we can hear them internally, not the therapist, not your partner who may or may not be available, but if you can hear them internally, ends up being a lot more peace in there.
Great.
That's what I want people to take away from this. If you struggle with all of that and you can afford it and you have access, go and see a therapist by all means. I've got a lot, as you know, of free resources on my YouTube channel, on my website. Have a look at them. They're completely free. And Tammy, I finally finished the parenting series. So there's a parenting tab on my site. If you're a parent, have a look at how these different parts inform your parenting. Because a lot of that sense of shame or the shaming that we get, it's become a habit. It gets passed down from generation to generation. And that's the result of us feeling bad. Right? There's a part feeling like it's not good enough in some way, like the too sensitive that we all carry. So we can stop that. We can stop that pattern so our kids don't have to take on, I'm not good enough, and then I have to be perfect or whatever other strategies. That takes up an awful lot of time, and it gets in the way of just being how amazing you are in the world. Yeah.
That's great. Derek, thank you. That was wonderful. Is there anything else you want anyone to take away? Well, I guess I was going to say one thing is that piece you're talking about is why we're all passionate about this model. We've
Right.
experienced it. We know what it's like. We know how it affects our lives. And that's why we become these ambassadors and these, so passionate about it. So thank you for saying that. Yeah.
It's just once you get into it, it's a different way of being in the world, but it's a way of being in the world which is easier, softer, kinder, less plagued with self-doubt, less plagued with worry, less of a need to impress other people. All of that can just drop away and you just get to be. And more than just be, Tammy, you have fabulous parts. They can do all kinds of things, right? Including make podcasts. I mean, including be a great mom, including putting up with the puppy, like.
Yeah.
And I've got great parts, right? And they do their thing, and everybody has great parts. And the moment they're judged, the moment that, you're too, hits you, and a part picks it up, that's where we begin to get small again. Oh, I better not do too much. I better not say too much. I better be quiet because I'm too loud. Or I better say more because I'm too quiet, and all of that, right? Once that's cleared, we just get to play. And sure, some systems resonate more with other systems than others do. Like, doesn't mean you're going to like or love everybody. You don't have to. There's no requirement that you do that, right? But you can look at people and say, oh, you've got those kind of parts. Okay. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. It is also helpful to know, and not that we're supposed to be pointing out other people's parts, but it is incredibly helpful to know that your partner has parts.
Yeah.
That is incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Instead of that's all of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if my partner, screams at me about not bringing in the ice and it doesn't land particularly heavily on me, I can go, oh, that's that part of them. Ooh, here we go again, right?
Yeah.
Note to self, try and remember the bloody ice,
Right. What's going to land on your parts? They're like, you're so lazy and unorganized. You can't do anything right. Right. So it's going to, if it lands on that part, then, oh my gosh, you're in trouble.
Well, then that's where you've got the co-escalation. That's where the protective parts start attacking each other. Because if, you forgot the ice, you've ruined the evening again, lands on my, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Then my protectors are going to come up and have some kind of response.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we go at it. And so, So let's notice that what's actually going on is there's just a bunch of kids in there, right? A bunch of kids that don't feel good, and then a bunch of kids trying to protect them, and actually has nothing to do with the present day relationship, right?
Yeah.
It just tracks all the way back. And once that's understood, even being able to say to your partner, like the next day, hey, you know what? That angry part of me that flew at you, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it. And I want you to know it's connected to a part of me that worries that if I don't get everything right, it means I'm not lovable. I just want you to know that.
Wow.
Even sharing that, that wow, right? Then you can respond from an open-hearted place. Oh, I did not know that about you. Okay, I get that.
Yeah. And so people can holler at you at ifsca.ca.
Hey, well done. Yes, they can.
Great. Thank you so much. This was great.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks for hanging out today. If you liked this episode, make sure you subscribe.
And if you really like this episode, share it with a friend and leave a review. You can follow me on Instagram at IFS Tammy and join our community on Facebook at the One Inside Podcast. Talk to you next time. Today's episode was sponsored by Brighter Vision. What's the point of having a beautiful website if it doesn't attract the clients you want to see? As the worldwide leaders of website design for therapists, Brighter Vision sees this issue happen way too often. A nice-looking website doesn't equate to a successful website. The truth is, your current website might even be turning off potential clients. That's where Brighter Vision comes in. Brighter Vision's team of website designers will create a website that is centered around attracting and retaining your ideal client so that you can have a nice-looking website as well as a successful one. Better yet, Brighter Vision is offering $100 off exclusively for listeners of the One Inside podcast. To take advantage of this offer, simply go to brightervision.com/inside. Again, that's brightervision.com/inside.